Yeah, welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here and about in Mendham and such. Anyway, just preliminaries. I did make a video on the website, basically about the trolls, kind of, and the lame way people wish to argue. Just, sort of old jargon, but this whole idea of attempting a character assassination, attempt to change the subject, cancel the subject in many respects. Just it's the last resort of the lame. Okay, when you can't win the argument in any kind of manly manner, you resort to some sort of tactic that just demonstrates that you don't have any argument. So, I won't go into it, but, there's certain characters out there that just can't help being personally invasive and rude. And, just the cheapest kind of arguments, posting Holocaust denier all over the place, as if this is a subject I had any interest in talking about. It was never my agenda. I voiced an honest opinion, and you're just playing some kind of cancel culture bullshit game where you're just going to sit there and say you can't, you're the ones who are too immature to have a conversation about the facts, not me. And clearly there's no implication that I have any agenda besides a differing opinion than yours about a certain fact. And that's it. So anyway, and if you're going to use that, then why would I have any respect for you? If you're going to play some game and propagandize as if I'm, a Klan member or something, it's just such bullshit that, it doesn't, I have no obligation to engage with people who can't do better than just making up fake stories. Even bringing up, like somehow I'm a public figure and therefore they can use my name anywhere they want because Fox News did a story 12 years ago about a lawsuit in which I was perfectly vindicated, okay? Like somehow it's news that I'm on some federal list for a crime I didn't commit. The facts are clear. I won a federal appeal, okay? Pro se's don't win too many federal appeals court appeals. When they're wrong. Yeah, it just never happens, frankly. I won complete victory. The judge was declared wrong. I was declared innocent of any crimes. And so again, bringing it up for what purpose? Has nothing to do with any of this. Well, anyway, so that's, the video did have better arguments than just those arguments, but it's just really about this fact that, you can't have conversation with people who can't resist going low. Is a way to put it. Because it is just, why should I waste hours of my time defending myself against accusations that are just crap? And it always takes so much more time to tell the truth than it does to tell the lie. And these are just facts of reality, and it's these facts that nobody wants to pay attention to. What is destroying or ripping apart, our civilization? And it is just these, these easy, it was an inside job, these easy little phrases people can pop out of their mouth, these simplistic views of things. And yes, it takes so much more energy to explain why thermite is created when you burn a bunch of plastics and in very high temperatures and blah blah. Going through all the crap of explaining how reality works to people, and how physics works and all this. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's just so easy for the little poo spreaders to just say things that they can't provide any contextual complete evidence to support. But anyway, so that sort of relates to Adam Curtis' documentary, which I sort of intend to talk about. I don't know about in how much detail. I took some notes, but it got to the point where it's just no point, because the story isn't really a direct story. It's a well, whatever. So we'll get to that. I also did a video on the Fairness First channel, and the links to the videos are in the you know, whatever you want to call the, whatever the little menu thing over here is. So there's the Do Not God one, and that one's the other one. It's on the inmendham videos thing also. I don't know if the Fairness First one's there yet, but anyway, it's on. Anyway, there's links. I'll leave the 2 links to the YouTube videos, so you don't have to watch the ones on the website. But whatever. This, you know, just give you fair notice. There are videos in other places, and I'm doing that for 2 reasons. Because YouTube is giving every signaling quite loudly that eventually YouTube is going to be like a network channel. They're going to produce content. They're not going to provide producers opportunities or any of that kind of stuff. They either own it or they don't want to know anything about it. And that's, you know, it's like the QVC model. You know, it starts off one way where, oh yeah, just a bunch of people selling their crap, and then it became, if QVC doesn't own it, they're not going to sell it. And the same sort of thing is going to happen to YouTube eventually. And the other side of it is that I'm safer on my own website. They certainly can't cancel me. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons for you to be supportive of these non-platform kind of parts of the internet. You should try to maybe have some habit where you can live somewhere off of Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, and you know, because the platforms are all horribly corrupt, run by evil people, and if you don't support the rest of the internet, there won't be the rest of the internet, frankly. So anyway, yeah, I don't know if there's any other notices worth noticing. Where's the Adam Curtis video anyway? I don't even remember where I put it. No, I think it was this way, actually. So maybe I should pause and see if I can find it before I say something about something I can't find. It's probably it. Yes, it is. All right. So, you know, this Adam Curtis guy makes some pretty interesting documentaries. Had an interesting life. You know, interviewed Gaddafi years and years ago. Just totally, you know, really interesting some aspects. But he makes these documentaries, and they all seem to have a theme, which is mind control. You know, and I don't really buy the theme at all. Some notion that our brains are totally susceptible to blah 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 blah. And yes, obviously there's a whole segment of the human race who is really stupid. All right, they are not much better than chimpanzees, frankly. And yes, you can flash a couple of pictures on the screen and they'll buy the product and blah 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 blah. But you know, most people, let's get real, it's a tiny percentage of people that are, you know, driven by such things. And yes, they can be seduced. You know, you put a pretty enough girl in the commercial and yeah, I'll go for it. You know, so we're all vulnerable to some of this manipulation thing. And I certainly have previously argued that you know, we don't have much control over ourselves. We're just reflexive organisms, and something else has to program us. The outside has to fiddle with us for something to really happen. We have more power to, you know, mess with other people's brains than we have to mess with our own, because the messing mechanisms are limited inside our brain. You know, you have to have certain structures to do certain things. You have to have certain ideas. It's sort of like being risk aware. So in a sense, it has a context to these bigger picture subjects of, you know, there are people who understand danger, and they understand risk, and they understand, you know, that things that have low probability over time, all of those kind of things. And those are, you know, programmed mechanisms that make them immune to making certain kind of mistakes over and over and over again, because they learn the pattern. They learn how the maze functions, and that this is the job of the maze, is to open a trap door and watch the suckers fall in it. You know, so in that sense, we are, you know, we develop programming that makes us less immune to certain features of manipulation. You know, so we become cynical. You could just use even that word. You become too cynical, you know, to be trapped easily. You know, by something so obvious as the stick with the box and the carrot. You know, you just don't fall for that kind of crap anymore. So anyway, it's 6 hours of blah 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 blah, you know, going through certain little anecdotal cases. You know, used China a lot and the USA in certain respects. Didn't, but doesn't, you know, it's just little snippets of things, and so it's all based on this music and images. And so the irony is that, you know, maybe he's doing that quite overtly in a way. He's using the very techniques he's maligning as manipulative in the documentary. I mean, the documentary is essentially a commercial, and it's just engineered to, you know, the images are engineered to provoke emotions, to provoke you know, a sympathy here and a hatred there, and make this ugly, make this pretty. I mean, all of that kind of crap. It's not some sort of complex argument. It's a very superficially presented argument in that sense. So, I mean, 6 hours of jargon and words and, you know, deprogramming. I mean, it's almost has this, you know, you're sitting in the chair just being whipped with the hose, and then the guy gives you ice cream, and then he whips you with the hose, and then he gives you ice cream. I mean, it has all the earmarks of just manipulation of your psychology again. Oh, here's Bin Laden, and here's this, and there's that. You know, and there are huge features missing. Like, there's just, I don't even think there was one segment, one tiny bit about India. You know, India was just kind of left out. And all these countries have stories, you know, colonialization, and, you know, how they are migrated towards civilization. And that's like the big picture that's totally left out of all of this, is that this is the same struggle. I mean, there's not some new modern struggle. It's the same struggle there has been since human beings existed, you know, in terms of dealing with this social problem. I mean, tribes had it 2,000 or 10,000 years ago. Tribes killed each other, you know, because as they became adaptive, you know, as they became capable of you know, ensuring their survival, of thriving, however, whatever word you want to use, you know, being successful. Being successful means you need more space because we end up overpopulating. You know, that's the big liability of success, and it's always been a natural liability. Now the trick is that you know, for evolutionary purposes, the idea is that most of the development are transitional organisms. The ones that are doing the advancing are small populations, so it's always to their benefit to overpopulate, because eventually they have to take on the big herd. Eventually they have to move into the territory of their origin. So say a couple of buffaloes wander off and go a few hundred miles away, you know, and then they start their own new herd of white buffaloes or whatever, and they have to get big enough so they can go back and wipe out the old buffaloes so they can take the territory. And that's, you know, this struggle's been going on since living things have existed, and then since humans have existed, it's been this, you know, this social warfare. You know, so you know, wipe them out by attrition, you know, starve them out, you know, drive them out in some way. And that's the mechanism that civilizations are fighting against. They're fighting against the consequences of success. And you know, the Europeans did it, they succeeded, and then they took over the rest of the world, right? I mean, they went everywhere and spread themselves all over the world, and not with the best of ambitions, right? That wasn't their ambitions to bring the rest of the world something called civilization. It was basically just mapping out where they're going to build their new house, you know, right on top of somebody else's teepee. You know, and so this is the thing where, you know, it's the same struggle. The struggle is how do we advance to a point where we are humans, okay? Like planet Earth is occupied by humans, okay? Not white humans and black humans and brown humans and gray humans and pink humans. You know, that thing isn't going to work too well unless somehow all of the races of human, okay, build themselves some little united humanness nation thing, and they start having a conversation about, well, what about this whole identity thing? Are we allowed to have religious states? Are we allowed to have racial states? I mean, where are we going? And how is that going to work? Which states get to be how big? Do they get to spread? Does Israel always have to stay a little tiny country, or can it become a bigger and bigger country? What are the rules of this game we're playing of, risk? This identity winning thing. And so now we're back to fair fights again. We're just back to the thing of well, what do we want to win? We want the best ideas to win. We want the best plan to win. We want the one that actually has some chance of winning. Having some population race war seems really retarded. Like, that won't have any hope. Let's try to all of us aggressively overproduce, so we can stress the system even more and make it even more of a war over space and territory. Yeah, that's not going to work. So even if you think you can win it, you're going to lose it. You can sort of understand how you're really not going to win, right? If all of you are trying to do that, because it's just going to make such a mess that if you win, it'll be like winning after a nuclear war. There won't be any place to live. The whole thing's going to be toxic. So none of this stuff is talked about in that context, and so that to me was what's very disappointing about it. This is not a new struggle. This isn't technology. Isn't the new scary thing. All of this kind of crap. The scary thing is the stuff that's always existed, and that is we are very selfish and very subjective in our personal comfort. We are programmed to be white people. We're programmed to be tree lover. We're programmed to be city lover. We're programmed to be a certain kind of thing. And we think everybody else should have our programming, and everybody else should want what we want, and everybody else should like what we like. And, and then this gets messed into a whole bunch of, the subtle politics of the whole cancel culture, of all of a sudden making it a crime to even think a little differently. Those aren't real crimes. Real crimes are when you whack somebody over the, in the head in the street and steal their money. That's crime. Okay, we can identify the real criminals. What real crimes against things like civilization, the litterers, the people doing obvious things that are going to degrade everybody else's welfare, and all of this other stuff. People's identity isn't really that kind of overt crime. Now, the ones that get kind of subtle, and the ones not really dealt with in any way at all by these, documentaries, unfortunately, is how it's all this religious nutter stuff that's really a big, huge problem, because that drives all of this excessive reproduction. No, not mentioned anywhere in the video, the documentary, 6 or 7 hours, is anything about the pressures put on civilization by this continually expanding population problem, and that the expanding population isn't in people who are going to college, and it's not people who have some sophisticated psychological understanding of their place in the world. They're frankly morons. I mean, there might be a better word for the ignorant masses of the world, but I mean, they're uneducated monkey men, whatever you want. We got to find a politically correct statement to describe ignorant human with dangerous sex organs. But yes, the world has way too many of these people who don't really understand that having 6 kids is a hell of a thing to do. How the hell can you do that responsibly? Let alone anything more than that. That you have an obligation to these creatures you create. They're not just some kind of weapon you're imposing on the world. You have to make sure they're just that. They're not a weapon. They're not some sort of destructive mechanism that just makes more frickin' holes for people to fall in. And this all is about having a conversation about what is civilization, and what does it need to maximize. So now that was part of what was in the conversation, was the fact that these brains are programmable, where and that you could go to Skinner's, maybe there's a picture of the little pigeons in here somewhere. So it's a lot of this Chinese stuff. like somehow there's something other than just random horseshit that decides the ebb and flow of all these revolutions and what takes place, when there's no organized plan. It's just just a form of, you build up the pressure and then it blows up where the weak spot is. Somebody scratched the metal on the outside, and that now is the weak spot. So when it blows up where the scratch is. But there's no method to the madness. So anyway, it's a lot of psychobabble, blah 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 blah. But there is something, these old, there we go, pigeon. Okay. That it is reward and punishment for us. It is what we grow into, and that we can decide what people are civilized by, what they're programmed by. We can have some sort of standard education thing that has more to do with having some element of social responsibility, rather than just teaching, pragmatic, make the person useful skills. It's not just about being useful. It's about a person having a strict and deep understanding of their obligations to the society they live in. Now, Japan had that for centuries, and it probably did them very well in terms of how much their civilization didn't have to waste on chaos. And some of that's admirable, in the sense that, yes, we should all have some sort of ethic that, our whole lineage is in jeopardy. What's riding on us being successful in navigating our lives and being productive and useful and valuable and appreciated and applauded, and everybody's just so thankful you exist. That should be everybody's ambition. That's what we should be programmed to peck. Is the circle that says, make me important, make me mean something, make me useful. And instead, it's people are doing that based on how much money they have, or some kind of standard. How many people did you rape? I mean, how many times did you get away with it? Their ego points and their drive points are being driven by an Olympic standard, for the competition, that's ludicrous and stupid. And so they're pecking all the wrong things because they think all it means is be a celebrity, be a celebrity. Don't be a person that has some sort of integrity. Do whatever you have to do. Sleep whatever you have to, manipulate people any way you have to manipulate them to get what you want. When what you want has to be basically to be able to navigate your life in such a beautifully graceful way that not only are you happy living it, but everything around you is just totally just oh, thank you that you exist. So and there's no examples of that, really. I mean, I can't even, the whole Gandhi thing is sort of a myth. He was sort of a moron. So it's hard to you can't really point at any examples of it, and that's what's really probably missing, is that our icons aren't what they should be, which is well motivated by some understanding that what we're here to do is to make the world a better place. What we're here to do is build good nests, so the little eagle chick can grow up to be a nice, strong, good eagle and build good nests in the future. And that because we're a little more fancy than eagles, we can understand that our agenda is a little higher, that we have to make sure the eagles don't poo in the stream, so all the fish die. We have to make sure that we're all organized and flying in some sort of rational way that doesn't break all the trees and rip everything to pieces, and where we're not going to be constantly clashing with each other and wasting money on fences and bullshit, and all of that takes social engineering. It takes, people have to sit down, not in some private room, not in some hotel where the billionaires go to talk about how to further soak the dupes for more money. How can we exploit the dumbasses for more money? I mean, they're not having anything like a complex social conversation about what it means to be human and alive. They're having some narrow conversation. What's good for billionaires? But there's no conspiracy. they're just doing the simple things. Yes, let's keep it up. Let's have an advertising industry. We all have money. We have great loud voices. We can create all kinds of propaganda. You know, we can cancel all kinds of culture. We can create all kinds of subversion. You know, in the sense that, you know, which was in here is some of the idea that the whole you know, back in the 60s with the whole race thing, you know, so much of the negative elements of it were actually engineered, you know, by the people who were supposed to be the good guys. You know, the good guys were engineering, you know, the fake news, engineering the circumstance that would allow them the political energy to tighten the noose and, you know, crank the screws and, you know, justify their bigotries. And, you know, that's really disgusting. So the very fact that we still haven't separated ourselves from all this corruption in the politics because it's all to our advantage, right? Well, the party is doing what I wanted to do in this case. You know, they're satisfying my bribe with them. Give me what I want. And they really don't care about the cost because of everything else that includes. You know, I sort of put my father in that category. I mean, it was a conservative in one element of conservatism, you know, in the sense of money, money, money. And you know, most of the rest of the agenda, all the religious crap and all the other shit that Republicans were doing, you know, filling the courts full of morons who didn't know what evolution is, all that kind of shit. He would compromise. He would accept all of that rubbish, you know, to get the tax cut he wanted, you know. And, you know, that just sucks, you know. But again, you can now point to the liberals and you can say, yes, well, before they were just a little bit inept, but now they've become completely dysfunctional. And they are just as bad now, but you vote for one part of what they're doing, and it has to do with all this cancel culture and all their agenda and you know, all this fringe crap that we're all supposed to embrace, and this idealism that has nothing to do with dealing with reality and the real conflict between people. We're all not going to get together and sing Kumbaya. No, the only way it's going to happen is we all have to respect the fact that we're on the same boat. It is a lifeboat, all right? And there's only so many seats on it, and there's only so much territory. And all we can do is say, well, if we're going to have a fight over this territory, let's have a fair fight. Let's have an open, fair conversation about who gets what seat and what territory, and it should be earned, and it should have something to do with, you know, something besides cheap advantage. You know, I have a bigger family, therefore I get more votes, you know, kind of thing, or some other kind of bullshit. And there's just nobody having conversations about how to manage, you know, the politics of living on a lifeboat. And that's what really is just, you know, that's the huge thing missing. So I guess the other part of this conversation is the manipulation part, I guess I would argue. And I'd say the real problem, as I've stated before, is that the intellectuals are wasting their time on all these conspiracy theories and bibble babble and, you know, simplistic notions. Capitalism's bad, socialism's good, blah blah blah. People shouldn't be forced to work, or, you know, it's completely, you know, it's completely separated from. They think you're going to be productive even when you're not required to be. You know, it's the whole commune delusion. Like, we'll all go live on a commune and we'll help each other and we'll be nice to each other. When, no, you all turn into selfish cunts, and the only person doing all the work, it's like Animal Farm. You know, there's one horse who does all the work, and everybody just fucks up. Everybody else just does their own thing. So it just doesn't work unless you create a structure that forces it to work. You have to put in place the laws and the regulations and the systems of politics, and, you know, if you want a democracy, you have to build it. You have to work on it. You can't just leave it. You know, oh, it's 250 years old, let's not rewrite any parts of it. Let's not fix any of the glaring, you know, omissions that exist in it. Yeah, you should fix all of that. And it, you know, should be a representative democracy, and everybody should be at the table. Everybody should be able to have a voice in the trial. It's a trial, okay? And so instead of being a mockery and a, you know, it should be give every opportunity for the jury to make the right choice. to get to find the truth. It shouldn't be just shyster lawyers, you know, attempting to manipulate people. And again, this is a form of manipulation. So this video about manipulation is a manipulation. You know, it has an agenda, and in my opinion, okay, it's cheating the argument. Now, part of it is you sort of have to do some of this jump cutty image thing, you know, to keep them engaged, because they're not really listening to anything. They're just, you know, they're visually focused on pretty girl, pretty girl. Oh yeah, I remember that. You know, some sort of, you know, because they really don't understand this is an argument being made about, you know, the future and the plan and, you know, fixing what's broken and all that kind of crap. So it doesn't end with anything, you know, that you could call. I mean, it's all this kind of, you know, oh, Google's making us crazy. You know, I mean, this is some sort of Google thing where, you know, when they ran their algorithm backwards, dog was what it created. So apparently dogs are really important to the internet. So it ended up just making dogs everywhere. The whole world just turned into a dog's face, okay, because that seems to be people's obsession or something like that, whatever. But I mean, this is just, you know, this is meaningless mush. This doesn't really have anything to do with how our brain works. And the fact is that we're perfectly capable of communicating ideas with each other and recognizing that we can all agree that we're selfish. We can all agree that we have huge biases. Yes, I love my family more than I love you. Okay, well, I can understand that. I can understand that's a prejudice, okay, that I really shouldn't let that influence me where I don't need it to. You know, so when, you know, when the push comes to the shove, okay, I should be able to say, yes, so I'll pretend I don't know my sisters, okay. You know, we should be able to do this kind of thing, you know, and just have some sort of capacity to recognize that, you know, yeah, I grew up in a certain world, and you know, as much as I don't like, as much as I see huge imperfections in that world, it looks so much more rational than what other people are living in. Like, I wouldn't spend a day in, you know, I wouldn't spend 43 seconds in their house. You know, I wouldn't, you know, if I was in their village, I'd be just running down the street screaming, trying to find a way out. It's so abhorrent, you know, as a, you know, how could humans live like this? Why would humans live like this? How the fuck can they do that? Yeah, so we have to concede, okay, well, they obviously can. So you can obviously program humans so they don't have your sensibilities, that they have some, you know, that they have these other sensibilities. And then the argument would be, well, what if we're going to optimize our function, what sensibilities should we have? Should we see pigs and dogs as, you know, fundamentally different creatures because one is fluffier and it, you know, has a few better habits maybe and is a little less ugly and a little this and a little that? I mean, you know, those are just logical arguments. I mean, obviously that's kind of, no, let's not do that, okay? Let's not be that's being a very bad husbandry thing. That's doing very bad management of your responsibility to the you know, less intelligent creatures and their welfare, is to breed a bunch of them to be your little show pets, you know, and then breed a bunch of others to be things you abuse and torture and torment and kill. You know, that's just too stupid, right? So I mean, those kind of arguments, if you're not going to concede that, no, that's not the, if I have a choice between the village that is vegetarian and the village that eats meat, I mean, it should be without a doubt that somebody would say, well, look, if we can get to the future where only one of those exists, which one should exist? You know, and even the meat eater should concede, yeah, okay, winnow me out, because, yeah, I have a dependency on something that's not very practical. It doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, try to make future beings who don't need to have pets. Try to make future beings who don't need to eat animals. Try to make future humans who, like I say, enjoy picking litter off the street. Enjoy it. It's fun. You know, that kind of thing. Make humans who enjoy doing civilization. You know, not enjoy ruining it or destroying it or, you know, taking their gun and shooting it up. No, they enjoy building it. They enjoy painting it. They enjoy polishing it. They enjoy waxing it. You know. So the argument is this has to be, ultimately I would argue this would have to be the thing that wins in the trial, is that everybody, if you get rid of all your little subjective bullshit, you have to concede that the optimum human isn't a pig, okay, isn't a slob, isn't a waster, isn't a, all of this crap. And that's the other part was in here, is this was all about individualism, in China, this idea that there's a philosophy of individualism, and that this is, we must preserve our individual identities and blah, 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 blah. And to me, that's such a nonsense argument. It has so little meaning, because who we are as an individual has nothing to do with something we built. It has nothing to do with a construction. It's just a byproduct. And you're just saying, if it's just byproduct, then why not have the best possible byproduct possible? If you're going to have just a symptom of something, we'll have really good symptoms instead of stinky symptoms. It's just, as a practical matter, it just makes more sense. And I'm not saying we should invent a Borg, because I'm just saying clearly we should be engineering these things. So we could change the standards at any time. We could say, let's make people, let's raise people to have even more of a love for this and less of a love for that and less dependency on this. But clearly, that's what the future is going to need. The future is not going to be well served if there's still a bunch of crazy religious fucks walking around saying their God is God. That's not going to work. There's no compatibility in those philosophies. They're not going to live with each other. It's just not going to happen. I mean, maybe someday in America there's going to be some tower somewhere with some guy screaming his religious propaganda across the, everybody's yard. That's an America that's going to be on fire, frankly. That's not an America that's going to last too long. Because that conflict is too deep and too harsh, and then we have to get rid of those. We have to normalize, even like this image, we have to normalize some image of dog, okay, and recognize that, yes, we can have different colored eyes, different this and different that, but we can't have these radical difference in the sense of one's eating, how to put it, where we're not complementary. Like our waste products are not, you're not eating my garbage, okay, and it's toxic. We have to become less toxic to each other, and the only way to do that is to blend all these cultural things and all this identity and all this ideology, and just recognize that we're all going to have to compromise. And some of those compromises, I guess people are just totally unwilling to even imagine yet. But the modification, in a way, this idea that we can't have this, we can't do this. It's not just as a practical matter, unless you're going to segment the world into, racial territories. You can't preserve this idea of pedigree, okay, and all of that crap. And as much as it's part of your life as a Doberman or as a German Shepherd or as a Pekingese, you grew up as one with just in Pekinesia. In a sense, I'm just arguing that if you think there's some plan, okay, for that to work, show me the drawing of how that works in the long run, because I don't think it can. Because when you get too extreme, when you go too extreme, the dogs don't have enough in common anymore. The Chihuahua and the Doberman really just don't have enough in common anymore. And their needs and wants and desires aren't going to be the same, and you're going to end up stuck in conflict forever. That's not going to work. So it's just about being a civilizationalist. You don't hear that word too much. I don't know whether I invented it, but I could, but you would think somebody else would have fell upon using the term. But that's got to be everybody's first got to say, yes, I'm a civilizationalist. Yes, I want to invest in civilization. I want a mechanism that allows us to migrate to the future in a graceful manner that respects people's rights to fight for what their identity is, or fight for their principles or their religion or whatever, and have a fair fight. But that you can't pretend that it's not going to have to, somewhere someone's going to have to be the winner. Some idea is going to have to win and some idea is going to have to lose, because there's too many of our ideas that are in direct conflict. You know, the socialist and the communist, the socialist or the communist, even if you want to say that, and the capitalist aren't ever going to meet. You know, they have to meet to something that says fairness, or they have to meet at some word that, you know, merit. They have to meet at some concept other than greedy, selfish scoundrel and simple-minded, wishful thinker. You know, there has to be something better than those two alternatives, those two fanatical extremes, and that's what the conversation has to migrate to. But again, it's not going to be about somebody. We're not. The idea isn't to manipulate people into it. The idea is to just persuade them into it. So now I'm back to the intelligent people again. The intelligent people are just too lost doing this kind of horse shit. They're too lost in you know, glorifying their own intelligence. I passed my GED, you know, when I was 12. You know, it's some sort of competition.
Analysis of behavior suggests that man's environment.
So, you know, this was the ominous, you know, DNA kind of codey thing. This is, you know, trying to make this all, you know, 1950s scaraganda. You know, it's just. But anyway, and so yeah, so to civilizationalists, this is a concept that the intelligent people have to cling on to. They have to start realizing that the social engineering thing isn't a bad thing; it's a good thing. Society's going to have to be engineered if we're going to survive these liabilities of our biology and our tendency to be selfish. We're going to need a plan, and, you know. And yes, that sounds, oh, you know, like, oh, Borg. But it's just a fact. You're not going to have civilization for free. You're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to work at it. You're going to have to build it. And it just, like, they just all want to sit back and say, well, nature will take care of it, you know. Or the other side is just God will take care of it. And no, God and nature are non-existent. Nature's an idiot. God's an idiot. You know, as a practical matter, if you want to believe they exist, they're idiots. And they're not going to come to the rescue. So it's on us, and it's clearly on intelligent humans. I mean, the dumbasses can't have this conversation. They won't have this conversation, okay? They're too busy, you know, stringing wires and, you know, putting up sheet metal and, you know, plastic windows and, you know, doing whatever they can to make their little cardboard house survivable. I mean, they're too busy surviving their meager existence. You know, they're too busy bailing their really bad, you know, cardboard boat. And so intelligent people are going to have the conversation, and then they're going to have the conversation about the fact that they're going to have to force these people with all these bad habits and all these poor ideas and these poor ideologies to shape up, and you know, quit raising your kids to be morons and menaces. Yeah, because part of civilization is the things living in it can't be wild animals. You know, that's just like one of the rules of civilization is going to be is that we don't want to have to live like we're wild animals. We don't want to have, you know, like like gerbils. We don't want to have to live in some container because we're animals and we don't know any better and we'll get lost. You know, we'll poo on the carpet or something. I mean, we don't want a world that has to keep protecting us from the stupidity of the dumbest of us. You know, we want a world where intelligence is free. And liberated, because everybody has it. Okay, everybody can follow the simple little, follow the yellow brick road, follow the path, and they don't need to be forced to travel the path. They can do it willfully because they understand why there's a path. They understand why it makes sense not to step in the flowers. You know, walk on the path, don't step in the flowers. I mean, these aren't tough, right? You know, the most restriction we want are the little, you know, red ropes that tell you, yeah, don't touch the paintings, you know, don't sneeze on them, you know, keep your distance, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, so, you know, at the worst we want is to have the ropes. I mean, the best would be is that we would all understand that these are valuable things, and I should be very careful not to, you know, whoops, you know, if doing something stupid. Okay. We shouldn't have to make it child safe. Okay, civilization shouldn't have to be entirely child safe kind of a thing for regular people, because they all should be able to meet the standard. You know. Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough for at the moment, and then if I have something else, I'll add it on and such. 45 minutes. Okay, I'll think about it. Alright, should be back. So there's lots of this Chinese opera and whatnot in there, little clips of that to sort of screw with your head. But you know, the subject, the technology part is important in terms of where we've never had a better opportunity to make all of this social engineering public. Like in the past, there was no way to really communicate with people at a mass level. There was no way for them to see all parts of society and all parts of culture. You know, only the rich people saw opera. Only, you know, it was these were completely separate worlds. So any kind of, you know, intelligence that you might see in Shakespeare plays, you know, it wasn't something that was automatically leaked to the masses. You know, it had to be handed out and dribbled, you know, where, you know, we have a huge advantage now where people don't have to read the book, and they don't have to do this, and they don't, you know, all of those obstacles to understanding what exactly is going on and how it's going on. So even like political movements, you know, so much of it became, you know, having to destroy your enemies, you know, the things that were going to compete with you and that might win the fair fight. And so a lot of cheating to win, you know, and that's all it became, fighting to win the ideological space, you know, the territory. And then the masses would be controllable from that, you know, authority, because you would have the cops and the army and the rest of it on your side and all that kind of crap. And yeah, I mean, with technology, all that, you know, you don't have to worry about it as much, because, you know, everybody can have exposure to everything, okay, and the alternatives, and even press the buttons that say yes and no, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So there's some use to technology in terms of motivating and creating the possibility of revolution. You know, not in a physical bloodshed kind of way, but, you know, revolution in terms of being able to vote for the revolution. You know, just to be able to say, yes, you know, let's do this change thing. Let's fix it. You know, all of that kind of stuff. So you could argue that there was people, you know, in all of these movements who were incredibly sincere. I mean, the membership, and they were fighting for not necessarily the same ambitions as the leadership, of course. And you know, so it gets so hard to sit there and say, was everything about it wrong, or was there, you know, 90% of it was good and the 10% was just so foul, you know, that it ruined it, it killed it, you know. You know, 90%, you know, of your cells are good cells, and the rest of them are invaders and, you know, microbes and other things trying to, you know, steal the territory. So it's probably a better analogy for this, you know, a little bit of poison, you know, ruins the pie kind of thing. And so so I think a lot of these revolutions were all meritorious. They needed to happen, and they just happened in, bad ways. So you could argue the French Revolution was, so much of it was worthwhile, and then there was just that overkill of, revenge and all of that crap that just, made it kind of ugly, and made the people seem, almost as bad as what you're getting rid of. The new people, the new ideology didn't seem all that much better than the old ideology. Full of jargon and just the cosmetics of giving a damn. And reverted, so it doesn't matter anyway. So all this gets to, all this class stuff, and that's the real struggle, is most of the human beings are, we all can't be owners, and, the owners have to understand they wouldn't want to be the slaves, and the slaves understand they don't like being slaves, and so this shouldn't be that hard to fix, and understanding that we just can't, you're not going to win with this strategy. That the strategy has to recognize that all the people have to be actualized. Now, whether they're actualizing individualism, that's the part where I'm saying, yeah, some of that's got to go. Some of this notion that I can, that we can all be ticking, going tick-tock and talk-tick and flip-flip and dip-bip, and, we can all be making all these different noises, and somehow that's going to be a symphony. That part's unrealistic. So we have to understand that we all have to have some common, we could even say, plugins for a device. We need the same adapter, the same plugs, so we can, there's a commonness to our function, because without that, there's just going to be big trouble. The future just has no hope. You have no hope of getting from here to there, in any kind of civilized manner. The conflicts are going to get too great and too messy and too ugly and all of those things, and it's not going to work. So you need to fix it while you still can. And I argue that that's where the intelligent people have dropped the ball, because they're too busy playing video games and golf and whatever else, living their privileged lives. A lot of them. I mean, a lot of the people who were educated merely as a function. It's what you do before you have your political career. It's what you do before you, inherit your millions. And so it's all wasted education. But that's all another, so many sub-subjects to the subject here. So anyway, I guess I'll end on that and just say it's civilization is a goal, and if you want to build Rome, you have to do some work. It just doesn't happen. You got to model it. You got to figure out how to make those little Roman arches. You got to figure out how to do some stuff. You got to you got to have some engineering skills, and you got to do it on purpose. And Rome is a good example, because they were still amateurs, and so they didn't quite do Rome right, and they fell into traps, and they got mired in horseshit, political rubbish, the whole. I mean, you could say ruin. What really ruined it was Christianity. Just fucking. Yeah, that was the end. So anyway. Yeah, enough of the video, and such. So, there just isn't enough conversation that has anything to do with. It's like this is scapegoating. This documentary is basically scapegoating, because it's just basically it's basically trying to say that this is just a propaganda war, and that. It's the only thing that will decide is where the money goes, and where this it really isn't. I mean, it really is the obligation of smart people to be able to talk to dumb people. I mean, they should be able to do that. They should be able to persuade people of the rightness of an argument, you know, and they shouldn't have to rely on manipulations and cheats and carrots and, you know, crude mechanisms. We should be able to talk to each other about the reality of our circumstances and what we are as animals, and, you know, how to progress to the future. And I guess all of that is part of that conversation. Is we really do have to get rid of these old religious ideas. We got to winnow that stuff out. We got to call it child abuse to raise a kid as a fanatic religious kook. You know, it has to be something they actually migrate to by volition. They're just going to be a primitive, retarded animal on purpose. But they shouldn't be. That shouldn't be the default for anybody. Nobody should be raised default religious kook. You know, they should have the option, the free option, to say that all sounds like crap to me. You know, the facts. They should have enough available facts to know that it is crap. I guess that's the real point. They should have enough of an education. Should be declared child abuse not to give a child enough education to know there's a rational option to the silly fable. But anyway, nah, that's enough of a video. You know, it's just another. You know, all you can do is plug away at it. You know, attempt to. Compose words that have some capacity to manipulate, you know, notions in people's heads. I mean, that's all this is. It's just storytelling. It's just, you know, describing the reality. You know, where do we really live? You know, where are we, and what are we doing? And there's accurate answers, and there's completely inaccurate answers. And that should be like the first thing we're able to convince everybody is, let's go with the accurate answer. You know, not the one that doesn't have a hope of being true. All right. I mean, it's the first step. You have to identify what's the maze made out of, and what are the things going through the maze. If you can't get that stuff figured out, then you can't even start to do the maze. You can't even start to do strategically smart things when you can't even figure out whether you're an apple or a penguin. You know. Oakley doke. So, thank you for your attention and such, and till the next time and whatnot. Blah blah. Blah blah blah.